Hey everyone, how you doing? Oh wow, it's the end of 2023. Huh, wasn't expecting it to end so soon. And fittingly enough, I think it's also about time that we finally give the black sheep of the PVZ games a proper review. That game being Battle for Neighborville. So hey, welcome back. And oh, you are in for a treat today. So this is a series where I cover and review every single game in the international PVZ franchise, to ultimately see if they were actually good games, or if we just had rose-tinted glasses on. And like I said before, everyone's favorite polarizing shooter game is the topic for today's video, with this one being the last I have to do in the series. That is, unless PVZ3 or Match actually release. Otherwise, this is it. And we just had to end it off on what is actually my favorite PVZ game right now. I'm sure that just pissed a lot of you off, but I will explain myself throughout the video. So before we actually get into things here, let's take a look at the categories for this video, those being history and story, gameplay, extras, and endgame/conclusion. So without any further ado, let's jump right into the first section, which is oh boy, the history for this game. This is something. Realistically, where do I even begin? Okay, so I guess we could start at the very idea of BFN, and this is something that changed quite a bit throughout development of the game. Now, I could be mistaken on this, and I really hope I am, because this validates the most annoying argument in the community, the EA bad PopCap good one, but essentially, BFN was once going to be just the campaigns, but it was probably going to be a lot bigger. But then EA stepped in and said, nah, we want you to make the next shooter game. And then BFN was born. Oh yeah, we also have a surprising amount of beta footage too. Take a look at this. Yeah, that's pretty weird. I believe the game was built off of Garden Warfare 2, so seeing all of this kind of tracks, but it's also really uncanny. Oh, and also, the entire game got leaked like a few months before it was going to come out. So PopCap decided to drop the game early, and that really hurt BFN, but we could talk about why that was the case later on. Now, as for the story, BFN actually kind of has one. Sort of. Give or take. Basically, Neighborville, the location of the game's chaos, is under siege by zombies. Unlike Garden Warfare 1 or Garden Warfare 2 though, it kind of seems like both sides have equal ground, which I think is really interesting and unique. With that being said, it doesn't really give us much more to work with besides the fact that gnomes are back as well. But we can talk about that part later too. Sorry, I know I'm holding back on a lot of this, but this is my favorite game in the franchise. Let me discuss it the way I want to, okay? Anyways, with all that filler out of the way, let's get into the juicy bits here, with the big section being BFN's gameplay. Oh, this section's gonna piss a lot of you off because I have a lot of things to say and the vast majority is positive. Oh god. Alright, so to begin here, let's start with what I consider to be the most important detail in this game, that being the differences it has between the Garden Warfare games. And despite the game being built off of Garden Warfare 2, there are surprisingly a lot of these. So to start out, BFN is sprinting alongside regular walking. Sprinting works in a unique way too, as it allows you to move quicker, but at the cost of not having most of your abilities or weapons available in this state. On top of this, BFN just feels different? It's hard to explain, but give somebody the choice to play Garden Warfare 2 and BFN back to back, and they can just tell that something's a little off. For some people, it's different in a bad way, and for others, it's different in a good way. Whatever the case might be for you, it's a unique thing, and that makes things pretty interesting in my book. Though, having no fall-off damage for most characters is very goofy, and anybody would notice that immediately. Weird. To round out the general changes, the variant system is completely gone and is now replaced with upgrades instead. Now I will talk about this a little later down the line, but for now, just know that this is one of BFN's major discussion points, as many people are either indifferent to the system or flat out despise it. But again, we will discuss that. So with the general stuff out of the way, what exactly does BFN offer for the new roster? Well, like I said before, all variants were removed, but alongside this, so was Hover Goats and Torchwood. Still in the files of the game, somewhat, but regardless, gone. RIP. To compensate, PopCap added 6 new characters at launch, and we'll quickly go over each of these. On the plan side, we have Nightcap, a glass cannon character that can sneak around and deal massive damage, Snapdragon, a defensive crowd controller that deals fire damage, and Acorn and Oak, which kind of work like Imp and Z-Mech, only Acorn can call an Oak whenever he pleases, and Acorns can also ride Oaks, And as for the zombies, we have 80s action hero, a marksman that can track and target enemies, electric slide, another crowd controller who specializes in power damage, and finally, space cadets and space station, which also work like the acorn and oak duo, which includes the connection part. Now, despite these new recruits, there's also some changes that were made to the initial roster too. Most of the OGs got newer reworked abilities, new weapons, and even a new role on the team in some cases. Oh yeah, BFN also wanted to sort things out, so now we have roles: attack, defense, and support. The kits for each character were changed to compromise for this, and some of them are really goofy, like giving Engineer a turret that makes his damage output insane, but overall, BFN made a lot of changes to the roster, even with the removal of the variant system. But that's not all, because we also have upgrades to discuss too. Okay, so these are a lot more complex than what I'm going to show you in the video, but I literally have an entire series on my channel explaining these. So if you really want to learn more, check out that series. But as for what you need to know for this video, the upgrade system works on a 7-point system, with every single upgrade in the game costing as little as 1 point to as much as 5 points, with 1 being reserved for the weakest / least useful upgrades, and 4 to 5 being reserved for the most impactful ones and legendary upgrades respectively. You start out with 10 upgrades for each character, and get 2 more that are exclusive for each one every time you promote them, which you can only do after reaching level 10 your rank. Now, this is all fine, and if it was actually balanced, then this system would be really enjoyable. Remember who made the game though? We know these guys. We know that they are not good at balancing. Some upgrades just cost way too much to be useful, such as Rapid Recomp for Korn, which increases his reload speed by 75%. This would be fine if it wasn't right next to his best upgrade, Super Spin, which literally increases his rate of fire. Other upgrades also suffer from flat out not working properly, or worse, being harmful to use. Jazz Hands and Upset Stomach, I'm looking at you two. Oh, and as for the legendary upgrades, these are pretty much variants. I mean, this right here is basically Chemist. Come on, PopCap, you're not being subtle. Now, with that being said, I do think that most of these are interesting, but they don't actually make the impact that they're supposed to, which is being viable side grades to the default characters. Only 2 of these are good at that, with one of them being the better support option for the character, and the other just being better in general. PopCap was not balancing this game, were they? So overall, the upgrade system is good in some ways, but it's also not good in other ways. But regardless, I do enjoy it a lot, and honestly, it can lead to some really fun playstyles, such as the speed build for Deadbeard of all characters. Wait, what? But okay, enough about the characters and upgrades. What about the game itself? Well, when you first start playing, it immediately thrusts you into a menu where you get to choose how you first experience the game. You can either play a match with AI, or you can jump straight into the Town Center Plants campaign. Regardless of what you choose, the game forces you to learn the basics almost immediately, which I actually think is a really neat idea. It feels forced, but it's still very neat regardless. Once you wrap up whatever you chose, you can return to Giddy Park, which is the hub world of the game. Unlike the backyard battlegrounds, things are a lot more separated here, as the fighting region is separate from both the plant and zombie bases. Some people don't like this, and while I completely understand that, I also recognize how bad Giddy Park camping would be if things weren't separated. And it's already bad. So yeah, I don't think this is such a big deal. Now, as for what's in the bases, what's important for this section specifically are the campaigns and the multiplayer portal. We'll go over both, starting with the campaigns. The campaigns are all very unique. Well, kind of. 2 of them are just a day and night version of the same map, only one has more zombie influence and the other has more plant influence. Both campaigns themselves are completely unique, but their collectibles are the exact same. So, yeah. Anyways, every campaign follows the same formula, regardless of the one you chose. You create an AI who takes you out on a mission, then you start gathering parts or pieces for a big item you craft that can deal with obstacles that block your progress to completion. After blasting through all the enemies and missions that stand in your way, you next build the contraption and fight the main boss of the region. This is a pretty simple formula, but I think it works out really well, and honestly, it's fun. I do also like some of the campaign missions you play too. Some of these are really charming, especially the pickle mission for Town Center Zombies. Throwing zingers at a pickle. It's so stupid, but I love it. The boss fights are also pretty fun too. I mean, they're not really difficult, but they're enjoyable for what they're worth. If I had to pick a favorite, Old School? Yeah, sure, we'll go with him, why not? Now, the campaigns aren't all sunshine and rainbows. They have their issues, such as feeling like you're doing the same thing over and over again on missions after a while, which, yeah, that's hard to ignore. I have played every campaign now 4 times, and 100%ed them 3 times. I'm tired. But beyond that, the campaigns also feel short, and that's not really PopCap's fault. I think this was more so due to EA's influence on the direction of BFN. I'm willing to bet that there was a lot more planned for the game, and we can kind of see that with the sheer amount of space that some of these maps have. Look at the out of bounds for Mount Steep, this is wild. To add on to the monotony of it all, we also have collectibles, which I briefly mentioned before. These are fine. You basically collect 24 gnomes, 3 diamond gnomes, and 10 items in each campaign, and this is really boring after a while. Not to mention that it's also kind of difficult for some gnomes too. You can actually buy campaign exclusive cosmetics and perks with the vendors around the maps, and some of the perks are gnome location charts. These would be more useful if it wasn't for the fact that sometimes they flat out lie to you and give you no indication for how you can get a gnome in the first place. Fun. Though on that topic, the reward for getting the gnomes is 2 chests that also give you a bunch of coins, and more interestingly, a secret boss fight in each region. There's also smaller fights for getting one of the diamond gnomes in each region, but these are barely worth mentioning, they're pushovers. Anyways, the Gnights, as they're titled, are these big gnomes that you have to take on to help out another gnome that goes by the name of... I didn't write it in my script, I don't care enough to find it. And he wants them taken down because they were mean to him. Hashtag stop bullying. These fights are all very unique, and they also have their own pretty cool gimmicks too. But once you defeat them, you get a universal hat, which is pretty cool. In addition to this, there's also a bunch of other goals in the campaigns, such as bounties that you can collect on specific gimmick fights, taking on a challenge of the battle chests, and much more. But essentially, the campaigns are here to be grinded, and that's not really such a bad thing overall. They do get tedious, but they're still really fun. Now, as for the multiplayer aspect, we only have a few game modes to discuss, and we'll get to why in a bit. But to start out, let's cover Ops. And this is first up for a reason, because Ops is a shell of its former self here. Oh no, what happened? So, Ops was nowhere near being finished when the game launched, and in fact, it didn't even get close to it until the latter half of the game's life. So what exactly is Ops in this game then? 5 waves. Just 5. And even on the hardest difficulty, they are really easy. But it's not like that matters because you can't select the difficulty unless you're playing by yourself or with friends. Why, PopCap? This game mode is pretty dead in multiplayer anyways, but still, this is easily the worst version of Ops ever. Not that I'm mad about that, I don't like Ops, but it just annoys me. As for actual PvP, there's only 2 game modes that you can pick at any time, those being Turf Takeover and Team Vanquish. Team Vanquish is exactly the same as it was in Garden Warfare 1 and Garden Warfare 2. Same rules and everything. The one thing that makes it different here are the new maps and the 8v8 format, and I think those changes are mostly pretty good, especially the choice to make it 8v8. But as for Turf Takeover, there's a lot more going on here. Turf has been simplified, kind of. Instead of having 6 points to capture, now there's only 3. Now to compensate for this, some objectives are now unique, rather than it all just being capture points. You also have to push payloads too, which, yeah, that's actually really cool. On top of this, the ending minigames are all completely unique, which, I mean, yes, that was the case for the other 2 games, but BFN has the most maps, so that puts it in a pretty interesting position. Some of these are fine. I mean, taking bombs from a rocket is whatever, I guess, but others are pretty fun, such as carrying guards to a chamber that holds a giant pickle. Protect the pickle, or destroy it. Anyways, I would say that Turf is both better and worse in this game. It's definitely a lot more interesting, but it's also like kind of unbalanced. If I ever get zombies on Peachy District again, I just might lose it. But overall, these 2 game modes are pretty fun. And with that being said, what about this? The weekly game modes. Well, these rotate every single week, and they're alright for the most part. A lot of them are either variations on the existing game modes, like Boss Turf Takeover, which lets you spawn in bosses, or just the only way to experience another game mode, like Garden Warfare, a game mode that lets you play as the OG 8 characters, but also the only way to play Gnome Bomb. Ouch. But there is a special case here, that being Battle Arena. This game mode is pretty interesting, as it's a 4v4 deathmatch where once you die, if you're not revived within a few seconds, you're out of the game completely. The game mode also has a capture point thing going on if you take too long, and overall, it's pretty fun. It even locks you out of characters you picked for previous rounds, so you have to play someone new every single game. I like this mode, even though I feel like it comes back way too often. Okay, I think that just about wraps up some of the main gameplay stuff. That was a lot to get through, but next up is some of the bonus content, that being Alright, so thankfully there's not a whole lot left to discuss here. If we're talking about extra content, then the best place to start is easily the customization. And oh my god, there's so much. So customization is one of the big things that PopCap made to make up for the lack of variance, and I gotta say, I'm a big fan. Rather than your face being the only thing you could customize, this new system also gives you new outfits too. And since there's no variance, these don't actually mess with the flow of the game all that much. Though some are still very extra. I mean, do you need that much gold? Come on now. On top of this, there's now also speech bubbles, emojis, and even vanquished tombstones that you could customize too. There's a lot going on. Now, the primary way to get the customizations and much more is via the campaign shops, where you can pay with coins or currency you earn from the campaigns, as well as the Rewardatron and Rux. Rewardatron takes coins only, and it gives you random cosmetics, emojis, emotes, and more each time you press the button. My personal favorite is Beef Wellington. I don't know if you can tell. Rux is back with a more premium experience, as he primarily takes this game's premium currency, Rainbow Stars. Yeah, remember when those were for the Town Hall? Anyways, these are all exclusive to Rux for the most part, with the exception of the prize map outfits. And ooh, the prize maps. Yeah, BFN has a battle pass system, but not really. This one is accessible to everybody, and it's free, but yeah, you kind of grind the game to get XP, which leads to prize bulbs, which lead to prizes. And these prizes are mostly themed on the months of the festival in the game, which, can I just say, BFN absolutely nailed how this all worked. I love how the festivals look in BFN. Each one feels different and unique, but that's just aesthetic stuff, it doesn't really matter. As for the content of the maps, yeah, it's pretty much just customization. Though, for a few maps, you can get the legendary upgrades for free, along with one of the 3 exclusive characters, Wizard. Wizard is basically a pocket supporter, as he can sit on the heads of any teammates and provide extra cover fire, as well as extra armor and more. He's pretty simple, but he's also got a really neat gimmick going on. Alongside him, there's also 2 other exclusive characters, those being TV Head and Wildflower. The gimmick behind these 2 is their numbers. Basically, if you have AI near you or teammates using the same characters next to you, you're rewarded with armor. So PopCap gave these 2 the role of Swarm, which is pretty fitting. Oh, and also, Yeti Set Go is annoying. That's all I have to say. These 3 characters, as well as the legendary upgrades, can all be bots and Rux, so it's not like you're missing out on much if you skip a prize map or 2. And besides customization, we also have bonus stuff to do around Giddy Park as well. One is a fetch quest for a pea shooter plush, which gives you a pretty cool gnome hat. Neat, I guess. And the other main content is the puzzle in Giddy Park, which I made a whole video on if you want the link to that. It rewards you with a nightcap outfit, and that's about it. Pretty neat, but not all that interesting. And besides that, there's not much more to discuss. We could talk about the piano, or maybe the microtransactions for Rainbow Stars, but who really cares about that? No, what I personally believe matters a lot more is our final section's contents. That being So, you want to maximize your BFN playtime? Well, there's quite a few ways to do that. Starting out, you can actually get every achievement in BFN, and it's not that hard. It only took me about 250 hours to get all 50, which even then, you can most likely do it in a lot less time if you're dedicated. On top of this, max rank in BFN is 2071. How is it even close to Garden Warfare 2, you might be asking? Well, that's because of a thing called Grand Mastery, which is basically just a flex level up. Every character's maximum level is doubled because of this, so you'll have to grind a little bit more to get max rank. To give you an idea on how much more straining this could possibly be, I have at least 500 hours on my Xbox account, give or take. And guess who isn't at max rank yet? Me. I got to 5455 and 450 hours on Garden Warfare 2. I'm at like 1830 as of the time of recording. Yeah, I should get back to that grind. But besides that, there's not a whole lot else to BFN. That's kind of it. I mean, you can empty out Rewardatron and complete every quest and max every campaign, and I did all that, So yeah, it's not hard, it's just time consuming. But with that being said, that leads us to the conclusion. And yeah, I still love the game, no matter how dry it might be nowadays. Maybe it's the idea of BFN that I love so much. The concept of a PVZ shooter that doesn't require you to analyze each and every single character you run into because you simply can't tell if they're going to spray flames at you or if they'll sprint burrow towards you. It just simplifies the process. And I like that. It could also be the fact that BFN feels way more fluid to me, but that's completely up to personal preference. I think overall, BFN is really fun, but has so much more potential that was never capitalized on, simply because the launch and execution of the game were both done so poorly. And that's more so on PopCap's end, because most of the devs for BFN were new to the franchise. So yeah, needless to say, that hurt them. But overall, yeah, that's my review and retrospective on the game. Was I being nice? Of course, I love BFN. But at the same time, I do think that this game gets a genuinely insane amount of hatred that frankly bothers me. It's not the end of the world that PopCap didn't make a Garden Warfare 3. Stop crying about it. Yes, while BFN did kill a lot of the momentum that this franchise had, it also showed us that PopCap was still trying new things. And I'll admit, I think that would have worked a lot better if they put time into it. And with that being said, thank you all for watching until the end, I really do appreciate it. This review was a challenge for me, in case you couldn't tell with my voice. And see, now I've actually talked about why I like it so much too, and I'm sure that pisses a lot of you off. But keep in mind, these are just my opinions and experiences with the title. Everybody is different, so go on. Tell me why you like Garden Warfare 2 more in the comments. I read them, so as long as it isn't a goofy reason, I completely respect the choice. Also, I'd like to quickly give a shout out to Gravitry, Aldenity for Omens, Waptha, and Skylar the Unicorn for being $5 supporters of my channel. Thank you all so much, you rock. And if you're new around here and you like what you saw, then maybe consider subscribing too. It helps me out a ton, and you get to see more long PVZ videos in the future. Win-win. Now, as for me, I've got a certain new year to prepare for, so I'll see you all on my next video. Peace.